process, and I will leave the floor to him.
Hello, everyone. First of all, thank you so much, Rita, for the great introduction. And I highly recommend you guys apply for the Asher Center if you have an idea. It's a great program, and you'll love it. All right. So first of all, pleasure meeting you all. Thank you for being here. I'm gonna be sharing my screen. That's the first step. Um,
Also,
yeah, just
before you start, Jean-Pierre, I would like to also highlight something that this session is interactive. Like we encourage you to participate, to ask your questions, to write them in the chat box, or feel free to raise your hand also if you want to participate. I'm gonna say, just state this at first, um, and then can I go on? Thank
yeah,
you.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Whoever can open the cameras, guys, please feel free to do so. آه عسى أشوف بس وجهي دايما. So yeah, would be amazing. Anyway, all right. So for today, مثل ما قلنا, the topic will be AI for problem solving. So we want to talk about how we can identify real world challenges and basically look into designing AI-driven solutions. So again, the audience here, basically anyone who's a founder or who's looking to be a founder, a student, innovation builder, anyone who's basically interested in building. And basically the goal again is to move from problem awareness to a solution design. All right. And what we can promise you throughout the session is that basically you will be leaving with a practical, let's say, startup ready framework. All right. Now, one thing to mention before we get going is that AI nowadays is no longer optional for entrepreneurs. It's a necessity. It needs to be used in like incubators and in basically any sort of uh, any sort of idea that you're building. It can really give you an advantage, like a huge advantage, and you really should use it. So the point here that you should focus on is that you should focus first on the problem and then AI second, and just make sure you're basically focusing on the outcome. So focus on the method, not follow the hype, basically. So let's go ahead and just basically start with the basics. I'm just gonna introduce myself very briefly. Again, Rita kindly introduced me. I'm a computer engineer. I studied computer engineering at ISAC, so I'm a ISAC alumnus, very proud one. I'm also currently the head of AI at Chisel. Also, I'm an AI consultant at the Ministry of IT and AI here in Lebanon. I'm also an AI advisor at Sayirne and other startups, as well as a visiting lecturer also at ISAC. So again, it's a pleasure being here with you all, and I look forward for this session. So for the agenda, uh, think of today basically like a mini founder journey compressed into one session. So we're gonna start by building, if you want, a shared language around AI, because basically if we use different words or words differently, we will make very different decisions. Then after that, we're gonna go into what we call the real economy to find basically high value problems that are worth solving. And finally, we will be connecting the dots of how you actually design, build, and launch something that uses AI responsibly. So by the end, you will have let's say, a repeatable method, not just a one-time insight. So that means basically you can pick up a new industry, a new problem, and run the same process again. So that is basically the goal of this session. All right. So again, as Rita mentioned, any questions you have, directly go ahead and ask. Now, this section, the first one, is basically the foundation layer. So basically, we cannot build the house without it. We need to understand the AI foundations. We will go through it very quickly because, it's the foundations. But what we cover here will make every slide after it click into place. Now, again, if you've heard of this before, it's all right, basically, but I'm sure there are some people who haven't. So here is a number that should excite you, basically. Now, according to Stanford University's AI Index report, which was released, I think, last year, global private investment in AI reached roughly $252 billion in 2024. So we're talking billion dollars, $252 billion dollars. And generative AI alone, which is a part of AI, it attracted about $34 billion dollars, okay, which was nearly 20% higher than the year before. Now, money at that scale means that companies everywhere are scrambling and running just to integrate AI into their products. All right. And many of them are moving slowly because they are big, and that is your window. All right. So big companies, they take a lot of time to move into AI or any new field, and I've seen it personally. Startups are much, much quicker. Now, the second shift is cost. So a few years ago, building an AI product required a PhD team and months of infrastructure work and a lot of R&D and a lot of failures really in general. Today, you can basically call a powerful AI model through an API in about 10 lines of code. So anyone can do it. You don't need to have like, let's say, to be a very experienced engineer. Even no-code tools like Make, Zapier, and VoiceLow, we're gonna go over them a bit, let non-engineers build working prototypes in hours and even minutes sometimes. So the barrier to building a first version has never been lower, which means your speed of learning is now a real competitive advantage, and your speed, basically, of moving things is your window, as we mentioned. Now, also, the third shift is customer expectation. So people now expect apps to be fast, personal, and very, very smart. So when you open, for example, Kareem or Uber or any other app, and it predicts your frequent destination, that is basically AI. When a blank flags a suspicious transaction before you noticed it even, that is AI. So customers are no longer impressed by AI. They are annoyed when it is missing. All right. So this means that the market is pulling new AI solutions in, not pushing them away. So this is something to also keep in mind. Now, to explain what AI actually is, the simplest and most honest definition is this basically. AI is software that basically learns patterns from examples and uses those patterns to make decisions or predictions. All right. That is it. It is not magic. It is not a brain. It is basically just a very fast, very capable assistant that has studied millions of examples, and basically it can apply what it learned to new situations. All right. So when you show it thousands of photos of cats, it basically learns to recognize cats. It's as simple as that. When you show it thousands of customer service emails, for example, it learns to classify them. All right. So what really makes AI useful to you as an entrepreneur or a student is that it can perform certain tasks much faster, much more consistent, and really at a greater scale than any person can. All right, or any company can. It can not better at everything, but faster and cheaper at the specific things it was basically trained for or built for. All right. And the value is in the outcomes. All right. So, for example, you can save, as we said, we can save hours, we can catch errors, we can personalize experience, or even basically handling small, like volume that a small team otherwise could not handle. All right. So, anyone here want to take a guess? Basically, what was the fastest app in history to reach 100 million users? Does anyone know what it was? Talking 100 million. Try in the chat if you can, or feel free to unmute. Okay, so basically it was ChatGPT. It just took 2 months, all right? Compared to 9 months, for example. Exactly, David. It was ChatGPT. Basically compared to 9 months for TikTok, 2.5 years for Instagram. And this puts the scale of public interest in AI in an immediate perspective, guys. All right. Now, these four terms are often used interchangeably. So AI, machine learning, deep learning, generative AI, but they mean different things. All right. And using the wrong one in a pitch or let's say a product decision can really cost you. So let's go ahead and just explain them briefly. First of all, AI is the broadest umbrella. All right. So basically any software that does require something like a human-like judgment is AI. It doesn't have to be, let's say, a model. It can be a simple, a few lines of code. It can be AI as long as it can mimic human behavior. Now, machine learning is basically a subset of AI where the system learns from data examples rather than following pre-written rules. All right. So think, for example, of fraud detection, churn prediction, or recommendation engine, for example, on Netflix or stuff like that. Those are basically classic machine learning. Now, deep learning goes even further. So it uses something that we call large networks that are inspired by our brain. All right. And basically it excels at messy, unstructured data. So think of, let's say, images, videos, audio, even text. And it is why your phone, for example, can unlock with your face. All right. Now, on the other hand, lately we have, I'm sure you guys have heard of generative AI. Now, generative AI is the newest and most talked about category. So it creates, as we said, from its name, it can generate. So it creates new outputs. So text, images, code, audio, video. All right. So think of, for example, ChatGPT, Midjourney, GitHub Copilot are all generative AI. All right. Now, why does this matter to you? Because most startups need applied AI. So a practical tool for a specific job, not fundamental research. All right. Now, again, knowing which bucket your idea falls into tells you what to build, basically what to buy and who to hire, because this is very, very important for you guys. Now, let's talk a bit about the story of AI. So the story of AI, guys, started in 1950 when basically Alan Turing asked the famous question, can machines think? This is where everything started. Now, for the next 40 years, AI was mostly about handwriting rules. And researchers here built expert systems, basically programs that followed some logical rules like if the patient has a fever above, let's say, 38 degrees, and a sore throat, flag for strep, for example. All right. Now, these systems worked in a narrow setting, but basically they broke the moment the word got complicated, for example. So they were not able to adapt, and writing rules for every edge case was not impossible. Was an impossible job, actually. Sorry, was impossible. So the lesson here for you guys is that rule-based systems are very hard to work with. If your product relies on rules someone wrote, it will fail when reality surprises it, you know? Because an AI that learns from data adapts and it can work with any sort of rules. And that is the fundamental shift the next era brought. Now, okay, now if we look at the modern era, before basically the data era took over, there was a moment that captured the world's attention and made people genuinely nervous about AI for the first time. In 1997, IBM's Deep Blue software, let's say, defeated the reigning world chess champion. If you guys have heard of chess, I'm sure you guys have heard of Garry Kasparov. And this is the best human chess player alive. In a six-game match, he was beaten. Now, the headlines were dramatic. Uh, some people said machine beats man. But here is the most important nuance here. Deep Blue did not learn chess. It was programmed with thousands of rules. It evaluated 200 million positions per second. And basically, it followed handcrafted logic that was written by engineers and grandmasters, for sure. So it was an extraordinary engineering achievement. Basically it was, but basically here the most important part is that it was a brute force, not intelligence, all right? Because it was basically calculating every single move and thinking whether it's the right move or not, all right? So it could easily beat anyone at chess and do absolutely nothing else. We could not use it for anything else. Now that gap between narrow rule-based performance and genuine learning is exactly what the next wave of AI set out to close. All right. Let's take a look. Okay, now the current era. So starting from around 2020, a new pattern emerged, something that we call foundation models. So instead of training a model from scratch for each task, uh, companies like, for example, OpenAI, Google, and Anthropic trained enormous general purpose models. So we're talking on every single data point that you can think of, all of the internet, every book that you've read, every sort of digital data that you've seen, and even undigital. They have trained them on all of these data, legally and illegally, quote unquote, uh, and basically on and everything again written on the internet, and made them available through something that we call an API. And that single shift turned months of R&D into days of integration work for any engineer. So again, nowadays, guys, a team of one or two people can build a product that is powered by these AI tools, by Claude, Gemini, without managing any model infrastructure. And basically, here you can bring the problem, the data, and the user workflow, and the model brings the intelligence. This is why the entrepreneurship opportunity nowadays is so, so large. And I'm sure you guys are seeing these concepts of one-man companies that are showing up, and the first one person unicorn, and all of that. So just keep that in mind. Now let's talk a bit about everything that AI can do. So what AI is good at. So first, perception. So it can read and understand documents. It can also transcribe speech. It can also do prediction. So basically forecasting next month's demand, for example, scoring the probability that the customer churns, stuff like that. And also, it's good at generation. So it can write first drafts, generating code, suggestions, producing marketing copy variations, and so on. So one thing to mention here is that the real money for early stage startups is often in the boring workflows, not the flashy ones. So for example, invoice processing, scheduling, like these tasks basically repeat every single day, and they are not exciting, kid, but basically repetition time basically repetition times the error cost equal a very real problem. All right. Now, one thing that I know of is what one Lebanese medical clinic that is spending 3 hours per day retyping insurance forms is a $50,000 a year problem if you price your time honestly. So this is something also to keep in mind. Now, let's talk a bit about what AI is not good at. First of all, basically is hallucination. I'm sure you've heard of it. And here, basically, guys, AI models can produce answers that sound completely confident and completely correct, but while being basically completely wrong. All right. In 2023, two lawyers actually in New York submitted a legal brief that cited fake court cases that were made up by ChatGPT. They faced sanctions for sure from the judge. And again, this is not a bug that will be fully fixed. It is a property of how probabilistic language models work. Okay, this is how they work. So your product in the future should be designed around this reality. Now, also, the second problem is accountability. So the AI does not own your business outcomes. So if it makes a wrong call on a loan application, a medical triage, or a hiring decision, you are responsible. You are personally responsible, not the model provider. Now, also, the third is the classic rule. This is a very important rule for us AI engineers, which is garbage in, garbage out. So if the data that you train or you prompt the model on is incomplete, is biased or outdated, or it's a faulty data, the outputs will be too. All right. So, for example, let's take a fraud detection model that is trained mostly on one type of transaction will miss new fraud patterns completely. Now, let's talk a bit about the three enablers. So, every AI product now, that you ever see runs on three important pillars. All right. We have, first of all, data. Data is the most important and the least replaceable. So, do you have basically access to real labeled relevant examples from the workflow that you are trying to improve? This is very, very important, guys. Also, hardware. Hardware or compute is basically the infrastructure layer. So basically, this is also like here you can ask yourself, can you afford to basically run the AI at the volume and the speed your users need? So here, for example, you can look into something that we call cloud providers like AWS, Google Cloud, and Azure. that made this accessible through something that we call pay-as-you-go pricing, which makes it much cheaper. And lastly, we have the algorithm and models. And these are the intelligence layer. So these are also important. Now, for Lebanese founders specifically, if you're building like a startup for Lebanon, data access is often the hardest barrier, all right, since we are a country that doesn't have that much of a data culture. And also, it's the biggest opportunity. So if you can earn trust with, for example, some sort of clinic, a school, or some sort of uh, obtaining the data ethically, that data becomes a very important part of your startup. A competitor can basically copy your interface or your software in a week, but they cannot copy 3 years of data collection. So this is a very important uh, idea to keep in mind. Now we shift into the most important part of the session, finding the right problem, which is basically the job. Now everything else, guys, the technology, the funding, the team, all of these are secondary to this. Most startups that fail do not fail because they built the wrong product. They fail because they built a product for a problem that was, let's say, not painful enough, that was not frequent enough or expensive enough for people to go and pay for. All right. Before we go there, is everything clear till now? If you can just reply with thumbs ups or anything in the chat, or if you have any questions, feel free to ask. All right. Amazing. طيب, let's go to the next. Okay, so now when you go ahead and open Instagram and the first video makes you stop scrolling, that is something that we call a recommendation algorithm. Now, this recommendation algorithm is basically is an algorithm that has learned your exact attention patterns, what you are interested and not interested in. So, for example, when you go ahead and type something into Google and it auto completes your sentence, that is something that we call a language model that is trained on trillions of words. When Spotify, for example, I'm sure everyone here hears music, or Anghami basically, builds you a Discover weekly playlist that somehow knows you better than your friends do when it comes to music. That is something that we call a collaborative filtering and machine learning. All right. So here the point is not to impress you with the examples that you guys already know. The point is this. So basically, your future customers have already been trained by these apps to basically expect intelligent, personalized, frictionless experience. Okay. So if your product feels dumb, slow, or generic compared to what people use on their phones every day, they will not adopt it, no matter how much it could theoretically help them. So you really need to also be, basically, you need to be different, let's say. Okay. In some ways. Now, let's talk a bit about behind the scenes. Now, behind the scenes, guys, basically, companies of all sizes use AI in ways that are invisible to customers in some ways, all right, but critical to operations. So let's take a look at this example. So retail companies at Amazon here, for example, uh, basically, they use demand forecasting to decide what to stock before the season starts, for example. Also, banks, they use real-time fraud models that process thousands of transactions per second and flag suspicion ones in milliseconds. Also, call centers, they use AI to route the calls and so on. All right. Now, again, here we are seeing how Amazon basically, guys, handles all sorts of operations, support, and analytics in their day-to-day job, how it can help them. Um, we can see how it can help them basically in everything that has to do with the stocking and so on. Okay, so I think we saw the idea. Okay, now also the AI products that people adopt the most easily are the ones that they do not have to think about. All right. So, for example, your email spam filter has probably blocked thousands of junk messages that you have never once clicked, basically. Google Maps, for example, I'm sure you guys use it. It quietly recalculates your route when there is traffic. You just follow the arrow, and that's it. Apple Photos, for example, automatically creates albums by face, location, and date, and all of that. And you did not ask for it, all right? Now, this is a critical and very important design lesson. So again, if your AI forces users to consciously interact with the AI part, basically every single, let's say, time, the adoption will be much slower, all right? So the goal here is to make the hard thing, let's say, invisible and the result obvious for the users. So again, when you design your product, you really need to ask yourself, can the AI work in the background and simply surface a better answer? Let's say without, let's say, the user needing to understand how. This is a very, very important point. Now, let's talk about how the industries have been disrupted by AI a bit. Now, health, finance, education, logistics, and many more. Now, these four are the most, let's say, discussed sectors for AI disruption. Again, health, finance, manufacturing, and no, not manufacturing, sorry, education and logistics. Now, each one is characterized by the same three things. They have lots of repetitive data heavy work. They have high cost of errors and slow moving and incompetent. Now, basically, these are not known for fast software adoption, and a misdiagnosis, a missed fraud signal, or a wrong grade, or something like that, these are not just annoyances, they are measurable costs that someone is motivated to fix. All right. Now think of this for Lebanon actually, and for the broader Arab world. The opportunity is even more specific. So healthcare administration is notoriously manual for us here in Lebanon. Prior authorization, insurance claims, patient records, they still involve phone calls and physical forms in many, many clinics. All right. So this is something that you might be able to think about. For example, education. It faces a serious challenge with personalization. So classrooms with, let's say, 35 or 40 students that has one teacher and no adapting learning tools. So this is something maybe you can look into. Also, logistics and trade in Lebanon. They suffer from documentation bottlenecks and at the borders. So basically, everything is still on pen and paper. These are not hypothetical problems. They are problems that people in this room may have personally experienced, and I personally did. So keep that in mind. Okay, so now where do startup opportunities live, basically? Now, the most dangerous mistake for a first-time finder, guys, is to go wide or is to build something for everyone in healthcare or all small businesses. Early on, depth beats breadth every time. All right, and this is something you have to keep in mind. So the startups that win their first customers do so by solving one specific, very small workflow for one specific type of user better than anyone else. It's as simple as that. Once they own that wedge, let's say, they go ahead and expand. So really look for workflows where the cost of a mistake is high, let's say billing errors, compliance violations, safety feature failures, and stuff like that, because those are the workflows where decision makers have budget approval authority. So basically, look for places where, let's say, a copilot can dramatically improve outputs before you need full automation. So just think of it in this way. Again, one example that Kareem, basically the app, they started with just taxis in one city. Souk, for example, they started with a narrow product category. Every big platform started very tiny and deep. All right. So this is something you have to keep in mind. Now, basically here, what makes a market AI ready? I have a question, guys, here. Is there data tied to a real decision? Like, do you have any idea? Like, for example, uh, if the workflow that you want to improve generates zero digital data, no logs, no records, no transactions, you will basically spend most of your time collecting data before you can build anything. So here, this is very, very important to that there is accessible data that is tied to a real decision process. Let's take the second example. Is the pain frequent and expensive? So a problem that happens once a year and costs $20 is not a startup, you know. But a problem that happens every single day and costs hours of someone's time is a very important and real opportunity. Now, also, you have to ask yourself the third question to know what makes a, let's say, a market AI ready, is that will users actually change their behavior? So this is the hardest one is changing user behavior. People often say that they want a solution, but they really resist adopting it when it requires changing, let's say, their habits and how they work and how they live. Uh, so the best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. So if users have already, uh, or if people have already tried to solve this problem with workarounds, let's say spreadsheets, WhatsApp groups, for example, that is a strong signal that they want a real solution. So keep that in mind. All right. Now, I want to tell you a bit about Paul Graham. If anyone knows him, he's the co-founder of Combinator, so YC, which has funded companies like Airbnb, Dropbox, Stripe, and over 4,000 others. Uh, he always says the same thing in almost every talk he gives. Make something people want. It's as simple as that. Not something that people think is cool. Not something that uses the newest technology. Something they actively want badly enough to change their behavior and pay for. That obsession basically with want, with pain is what basically separates the YC founders from basically average founders. So again, the strong statement here have three things in common. They name who is affected specifically, they describe when the pain happens, and they quantify how much it costs in time, money, or risks. All right, so here, this is a very, very important point to keep in mind. Now, to talk a bit about the founders. So the best founders are something that we call basically ethnographers before they are engineers. So this is something that they have to keep in mind. So first of all, they have to do multiple steps. So step one is that they have to observe. All right. So they have to shadow a real user doing their actual work. Sit, for example, in the clinic admin room for 2 hours, watch a logistic coordinator track a shipment, or also be involved in that field in the past. So, for example, if you were working in this and you saw a problem and you know it is a problem, you don't have to do this step, obviously, because you have already observed it. Now, the step two is basically mapping the friction. So basically marking every point where time slows down, where error happens, where people switch between tools, and where someone has to ask a colleague for help. Step three is to validate urgency. So basically talk to at least 10 people who do this job. Listen to for the phrases they repeat. I have to do this manually every time. We always miss this, etc. Like look at their pain points basically and see how urgent it is. And step four is definitely prioritization. So basically to rank the problem by how big they are, how often they happen, and how likely AI is to solve them today, not in 3 years. Now, we really now, let's say we have identified the problem. Now the next step is to go ahead and build. This section is basically, guys, this is how to go from a validated pain point to a real AI-powered product. Now, without, again, definitely wasting months on the wrong approach. So we will cover solution design, MVP thinking, and all of that. But again, before we go to this section, just want to make sure that if everything is clear, please just do some thumbs ups to make sure all is going well. All right, amazing. And if you have any questions, just directly feel free to cut me off. Amazing. All right. All right. Let's take some sector pain point examples. So in health, the number one complaint from clinic staff across the world is not patient care, it is paperwork. All right. A 2022 study that was published in the Internal Medicine found that U.S. physicians spend more than 4 hours per day on administrative tasks. So documentation, prior authorization, billing, and stuff like that. Now, here in Lebanon, we also face the same ratios, even if not more. And AI can really handle these. So AI can handle transcription, they can handle form pre-filling, they can handle insurance coding automatically, For example, in finance, let's take the problem here is manual compliance. All right. So, for example, checking transactions against regulatory rules, flagging suspicion activities, and so on. Banks that still do this manually are paying analysts to do the work that AI models can do faster and much more consistently. All right. In education, we already mentioned a couple of examples also, and logistics and many more. So these are all sector pain points that should be and can be tackled. So, for example, learning and feedback bottlenecks, demand volatility, and so on. And also keep in mind that there are many, many more sectors that have this, but we started with the biggest four sectors that can be, let's say, AI'd. Now, to validate the problem, the golden rule of lean startup thinking, which is made by the famous Eric Ryers and Steve Bank, is this basically. Get out of the building. Do not basically build first. Basically, go ahead and talk first. So your first 10 interviews are not sales call, they are learning sessions. So ask people to basically uh, to describe the last time the problem happened, ask what they did about it, ask what it cost them, and just really never ask, would you use this? Because people can say yes to everything hypothetical. Instead, ask, can I show you a rough version next week and get 30 minutes of your honest reaction? So these are very, very important points. Now, also, the strongest validation signal is commitment behavior, not opinions. A decision maker, guys, who agrees to join a pilot, who shares data access, who puts budget time on the calendar, or introduces you to some colleagues, is showing real demand. All right. So keep that in mind. Now, also, one thing that's important that is basically writing a sharp problem statement. Now, a strong problem statement is one of the most powerful assets that you own as a founder. It guides what you build, what you measure, and what you pitch to investors, and what you promise customers. The formula is here, guys, is who struggles with what specific painful thing that causes measurable negative outcomes, and basically that is it. All right. No solution language, no product description, just literally the pain. Now, also, the last thing is the biggest mistake in AI that product design is starting with the technology. So, for example, we can say that we have GPT-4. What can we do with it? This is a very wrong question, guys. The right question is, what outcomes does the user need and what role should AI play in delivering it? As simple as that. Sometimes the AI role is very small. Sometimes it's non-existent. Sometimes it's just a pre-filling a field. It can be summarizing a document, flagging some sort of anomaly. But sometimes it is very central, all right? Which is basically generating the whole output or being a complete AI company. So here, basically start again from the desired end state and work backwards, all right? And this is a very, very important point. All right. So here, which AI types for each problem? So one thing to mention is that there are multiple types of AI. So we're gonna discuss a bit when to go with what. So if your problem is about predicting a number or a category, so for example, will this customer churn? What is next month's demand? Is this transaction fraudulent? The right tool is usually something that we call supervised machine learning, or basically a forecasting model. All right. So here, basically, you feed it historical data, it learns the patterns, and it predicts. Now, if your problem, however, like on the other hand, if your problem involves language, document, or content, summarizing reports, answering questions, etc., here you want something that we call NLP or natural language processing and generative AI workflows. And these are often combined with something that we call retrieval systems. So the answers stay grounded to your actual data. All right. However, lastly, if your problem is about scheduling, routing, or matching, assigning drivers to deliveries, for example, matching tutors to students, optimizing a pricing rule, you often need something that we call a hybrid of rules, an optimization algorithm, and, for example, ML or machine learning. So the most common mistake here that you guys can make is using a chatbot for everything. It doesn't make sense. Nowadays, I'm seeing this a lot. and it's a big problem. A chatbot is not, for example, a forecasting agent. It is not a scheduling optimizer, and forcing it basically into these roles basically create a product that is simultaneously complicated and underperforming. So really, it is very, very important, guys, as a founder to pick the right tool for the job, not the trendiest one. Now, when to build, when to buy, and when to partner. First of all, you build only the things that create your actual differentiation. So the parts of the product that competitors cannot easily copy because they require your specific, for example, data, your domain knowledge, or your unique workflow integration. Everything else, authentication, cloud hosting, payments, etc., you should buy or use off the shelf. So every hour that you spend rebuilding a login system is an hour that you are not talking to customers, for example. Now, for partnering, uh, basically you partner when the fastest path to your target user runs through someone else's trust relationship. So if you want to, for example, sell hospitals in Lebanon, we'll come back to this example, a partnership with some sort of medical association or a health insurance company will you give you basically instant credibility and distribution. Now, for example, let's say if you want to work with financial data, a fintech partner or a regulatory body partnership can unlock access that would take you years to earn alone. All right. Again, the best partnerships trade credibility for speed, and this is the most important part. Your innovation basically for their network. Be specific about what each side gets, and just definitely write it down and sign on it. Now, to build an MVP. Now, an MVP basically, guys, it stands for a minimal or a minimum viable product. And in the AI world, it means one core user, basically one core user scenario. All right. One measurable success metric and one target group of 5 to 20 users or customers. Not 100, not a waiting list of 1,000, 5 to 20 people who will use it. That's it. And these will give you the honest feedback that you need. Now, to give you an example, GitHub Copilot is a very well-known software in the development field, and it started as a narrow experiment for small set of developers. Notion, I'm sure you guys have heard of Notion AI. It was tested with a small beta group before wide release. It was small, tight, and fast. Now, the small or the second critical design element for an AI MVP is fallback behavior. So basically, what happens when the model is uncertain, is wrong, or basically outside its competency? If you do not design for this, your product will fall exactly the moment that matters the most. And this is a very also very important point. Uh, so really, you have to show the confidence level and ask a clarifying question, escalate to a human, and basically handle these situations. Okay, we already discussed this. All right. So now let's talk a bit about bias. Now, bias in AI is not theoretical. This is a very important point to also discuss. It is measurable and consequential. To give you an example, in 2018, Amazon shut down an AI recruiting tool that they had because it had learned to penalize resumes that included the word woman, as in basically a woman's chess club, because the training data was historically male dominated. So the model reflected the bias in the data. And when you design your product, ask who could be harmed if the model makes a wrong prediction. For example, here in our case, it was female applicants. Could it be low income borrowers? Could be students from under-resourced groups, and so on. So this is a very, very important point, guys. Also, another point is to basically the privacy. Privacy is not just a legal checkbox. It is a trust signal that your target users will look for, especially again, in healthcare, finance, education. These are very, very important points, and there are a lot of regulatory around it. All right. Now, again, if you are operating in Lebanon with European users or investors, the General Data Protection Regulatory or GDPR may apply, and it really requires consent, the right to deletion, and data minimization. And even for local startups, these are very, very important ones. All right. Now, common pitfalls and basically how to avoid them. So the first and most common pitfall is basically building for novelty instead of pain. Every year, dozens of startups launch because their founders were excited about a new AI capability, not because they found a customer who urgently needed a problem solved. Now, these companies, guys, raise a small round on demo excitement, fail to convert the demos into paying customers, and shut down within 18 months, which is a year and a half. So this is something you have to always keep in mind, guys, that excitement does not pay salaries, customer pain does. All right. Also, the second pitfall is when you overpromise accuracy. So again, this is something that's very, very important is that AI products have an error rate. That is a fact. AI is not perfect. So if you go ahead and tell your customer your model is 95% accurate and then it fails visibly 3 times in the first week, you have lost their trust permanently and you have lost this customer forever. So this is something also you have to keep in mind. The third pitfall is, for example, ignoring adoption design. So you can build a technically excellent product that nobody uses because you did not uh, design the onboarding, you did not train the users, or basically manage the change inside the organization. So again, technology adoption is a people problem, not a code problem. Now, the final section here is about the business layer. So how AI companies, they make money and how they get funded and how they build teams and how, let's say, the first 6 months should look. So we will move through it with real examples and yeah, let's go over it. Now, the first and common model is something that we call SaaS subscription, so software as a service subscription. So you pay a monthly or annual fee to access an AI-powered tool. Think of, for example, Microsoft Copilot for Office 365. It's priced at, I think it was either 20 or $30 per user per month on top of existing Microsoft licenses. GitHub Copilot, on the other hand, is like $10 a month for developers. Notion AI, Cursor, they also have the same pattern. All right. Now, this model works because it creates predictable recurring revenue and aligns value delivery with ongoing use. Now, the second model is something that we call usage-based APIs. So here basically you pay for what you consume, typically per API call, per token, which is basically a word if you want, or sorry, a character, or per compute second. So OpenAI's API, Anthropic's Claude, for example, Google Gemini API, and all of these, they all use this pricing. They have the same model. And this payment model is great for startups that are building on top of these models because costs scale with revenue, and you only pay more when you are serving more users, which makes sense for you guys. Now, also the third model is outcome-based pricing, which sounds ideal, but is rare in pure form. So more commonly, you see it embedded. Like for example, you pay when the AI's optimizations delivers a result, for example, in Google's ads. Stripes, for example, fraud detection is priced on successful transaction volume. So basically, you based on the outcomes that the system protects. All right. Again, for B2B, this model is powerful but requires reliable measurement infrastructure before you can offer it. The first two are usually uh, the ones that are most famous. Actually, even the first one, the SaaS, is the one that makes the most sense for startups. Now, for the funding landscape, in 2024, AI startups raised more capital than any other category by far. This is globally. But that headline, guys, hides a very important truth. The money was heavily concentrated. The top 10% of the AI startups raised the vast majority of that capital. And what really gets a startup into the 10% is basically at the earliest stage, like pre-seed and seed. Investors are betting primarily on team quality and problem conviction. So basically, they want to see founders who deeply understand the pain that they are solving, who have talked to 50 plus potential customers, and who can explain in one sentence why this problem matters. So, so yeah, that's mainly it. Okay. Now, to build the right team. Now, the most common founding team mistake in AI startups is assembling a group of engineers without a domain expert or a customer-facing person. Now, here you need four capabilities on or near the founding team. So, first of all, you need someone who deeply understands the industry and the user pain. So, this is someone that we call the domain truth. Someone who decides what to build and what to cut, which is basically the product leadership. Someone who can write and ship code or integrate AI tools, which is basically the engineering part, and someone who talks to customers every week and manages the sales, the partnerships, and basically the partnership conversations and so on, which focuses on the go-to market. So these are the very, very most important team players, let's say. And these cross-functional teams outperform pure technical teams with ease. Now, let's take a case study, which is basically let's take a problem and take it from problem to an AI solution. So the problem here, basically, we want to start by basically the case study. So first of all, the case study again uses MoveWorks, which is an AI company that automates internal IT and HR support. So, for example, things like password resets, access requests, device issues, and policy questions, really. The problem was universal. It was expensive. So the employees, they open support tickets for routine tasks, and those tickets sit in queues for hours or days, and basically you get inconsistent answers from different angles, which creates basically frustration. So again, for a large company with thousands of employees, this is easily millions of dollars per year in lost productivity. So what is the AI solution for this? The AI solution was a conversational copilot that basically resolves routine requests automatically. So when a request is ambiguous or sensitive, a security question, it basically routes to the right human with with the full context already collected. So this basically published customer results that have been cited across the industry. Uh, it basically reported around 350,000 employees' hours reclaimed from repetitive support work. It reported 74% reduction in ticket volumes and roughly 50% fewer live agent chats within 30 days. So always verify these numbers on the vendor's current case study because they are getting updated. But basically, guys, here the pattern is universally applicable, basically. Again, find a high value, repetitive workflow that costs a lot of human time, build an AI layer that handles the common cases reliably, and escalate the edge cases gracefully. That is basically the template that you need, and it always works. You can apply it to all sorts of Lebanese startups, any sort of clinic appointment workflow, student support system, anything really. They will all work. Again, so here let's talk a bit about the founder's playbook for the first 6 months. So first of all, the first to the second month are entirely about validation, not building. So you need to talk to at least 50 to 20 people who basically represent the target user. Define your problem statement. So basically, identify one specific workflow that you can improve. Many founders basically skip this because it feels slow. They regret it deeply in month five. Also later, month 3 to 4 are the MVP phase. So here you have to build the smallest possible version that demonstrates the core value. Onboard 5 to 20 pilot users, as we said, who have agreed to give very honest feedback. And here measure the time, the metric that matters, which is time saved, error rate, and so on. And again, really here you have to run feedback loops weekly. And the last 2 months are about proof and preparation. So you need to improve reliability based on the pilot feedback. So you need to document your ROI story with real numbers and focus on testimonials and all of that. Again, if the results are there, you are now fundable at the pre-seed or seed level. If not, you have learned faster and cheaper than if you had built for a year first. All right. So this is the first 6 month playbook for a founder. Now, a bit of discussion here about Lebanon, since we are all here from Isaac. Lebanon has a growing startup ecosystem. We have organizations like Veritech, for example. We have stuff from at BDD. We have programs tied to universities, like again USG, Isaac here. There's LAUB, like iPark. There's LAU. There's USG. They all support structured uh, support programs for early stage founders. Regionally, also there are programs like Flat Six Labs, Astro Labs, MIT Enterprise Forum. There are a lot of these that provide access to mentors, investors, peers, and so on. And globally, definitely, we have YC, which is Y Combinator that we mentioned, which now also accepts applications from anywhere and has funded a number of Arab founders and companies. So these programs, guys, really exist to reduce the learning curve. So really take advantage of them and make it easier on you. So we are here again, we are here with the Asher Center. Make sure to take advantage of their services, of what they're trying to help you with. All right. But really one thing I want to mention is that these programs do not replace the fundamental work. Like you guys, the founders who get the most out of the incubators and accelerators are the ones who arrive with a clear hypothesis, a bias towards it, and willingness basically to be wrong and iterate quickly and fix your stuff. This is something also very, very important to keep in mind. So use them again for these things specifically. Doris, let me read, sorry. Hi, Jean-Pierre, for creating accurate data sets for AI model training when real data isn't available, or for sale tool which you recommend with less error rate. I didn't understand the question. If you can repeat, Doris. Or if you want, feel free to unmute. Doris, can you hear us? If you want to ask, we cannot hear you if you
Yes,
talk.
yes, you can
Uh,
hear me now. Yes,
yes, yes, go ahead.
yes, great, great. I want to tell you that I follow up with you on many occasions with
Thank
AWS,
you, thank you, thank
all
you.
the BDD AI training that is happening in Smart ISA, and of course, Azure Center,
Amazing.
CIE. So I want to ask you about if we want to train an AI model to make sure that our AI model is accurate, especially when we are lacking of data set in Lebanon. As you mentioned before, so mainly even if you collected data, it might be uh, not accurate, inaccurate, or the data quality of it needs cleansing. So eventually, if we are training our AI model based on data set, it should be accurate in order to have a clean output, accurate information. So mainly if I created a data set from an AI tools, we already know, and as you mentioned before, that it can have error rate,
Yes,
expect some error rate. So for creation of data sets from based on research and validation, which tool, AI tool, do you recommend other than the usual one, ChatGPT
yes,
and Claude and
yes.
Perplexity? Something
So,
specific for data sets.
yes, so here it depends on what kind of data sets you want. Basically, we have a concept in AI that we call synthetic data sets. So synthetic data sets are generated data sets that are programmatically generated data sets, either using AI or either using, let's say, normal coding, or even 3D engines in some cases. So here it depends on the exact problem that you are trying to build. But one case is, for example, you can use OpenAI's API to generate them. It's a simple way. You can also create specific, again, codes or programs that generate these. And also you can, as I mentioned, like 3D engines, if you're working with images and you cannot go and collect, we're talking millions of pictures, you just create a 3D synthetic, a 3D engine, and you collect all of these pictures from that 3D engine. or a 2D engine. It really depends on what your goal is. So here, the whole point is that it depends on what kind of data you want. And from there on, you can go ahead and basically plan ahead. But there isn't a one rule size fits all, you know. There's basically a challenge with that you have to tackle through each problem, if that makes sense.
Yes, exactly. As you mentioned, there is many tools, ones for image, ones for video, but we are mainly into numbers and scientific biochemical, if you want, information, which is purely experiment data sets, pure numbers.
Mm,
Mainly, if we did some R&D, we find out like sanction dot AI, and I'm not sure if it's really accurate. We are into the validation phase. I don't know if
yeah.
you about it.
No, no, personally, I haven't heard of it.
Yeah.
But even ChatGPT can do most of these, by the way. If you prompt it well and if you build on top of it, you can probably get there. Or, for example, using models like Claude Opus, the latest ones, they can probably do it in a good accuracy. Or worst case scenario, if you don't trust them that much, you can build like an API based uh, let's say solution that has RAG on top of the LLM, and it takes as input for the data, it takes the current data that you have, so it generates something similar, if that makes sense.
Yes, I think yes, and the API with LLM, you mean you have to create an agentic, some kind of an
Yeah,
agentic.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Some sort, exactly. It has to be a agentic system with like a RAG system on top of it.
Okay, okay, the big companies that they excel, as you mentioned before, like not all the startup succeed. 70% fail, 30%, 70-30 rule. Now we're gonna change it, not 80-20. But the idea is that how did they manage? Do you think only the user and the experiment life that makes right validation, or
Yes,
can
it's
happen?
it's a bit of everything, really. As I was mentioning, like it's the problem. It's the how quick you are to market, if there's a need, if people are willing to pay for it. Like maybe there's a need, but people are not willing to pay for it. Like this is a very important point where, okay, there is a problem. However, I'm not willing to pay for it. I don't
Yes.
know, $5. I can solve it in an easier way. So this is also a very important point. But yeah, it's a bit of everything, I would say. And also the time, like if you're at the right time. All right, amazing. All right,
Thank you.
guys, let's continue. My pleasure. So again, let's take the next 30 days, which are the three actions that you have to start immediately, in my opinion. So first of all, you need to identify one target user segment and one painful workflow. So not a broad category, one specific type of person, if you want doing one specific task that generates real friction. Write it in one sentence by the end of this week, for example, and note it down. The next action, let's say, is to run 10 problem interviews over the next 3 weeks, for example. So ask about behavior, not opinion, record the patterns, and basically look for phrases that repeat. And the third action, which is the most important one, which is to write one AI MVP hypothesis with a single measurable success metric. So, for example, again, as we were saying, like time saved, error reduced, completion rate, cost per unit lowered. And again, these three actions are not aspirational. They are concrete and completable in 30 days with no budget and no technical skills required. So here, guys, whoever can start this will be 3 months ahead to the ones who wait for the perfect idea. And this is something very important to mention. Now, the most important part, if you guys want to take pictures of these, please feel free to do so. We're gonna go over some of the tools and resources that you can use in your day-to-day that will make it easier on you. Now, first of all, for learning, basically, we have a lot of courses that you can use. For example, we have Deep Learning AI, which is Andrew Ng's short course platform. He's a very well-known AI, uh, basically educator in the world. He's one of the most respected ones. He's also a former VP and chief scientist and a co-founder of Google Brain. Uh, and basically, this platform offers short courses that each take, I would say, 5 to 10 hours maybe to complete. So, meaning you can finish one in one evening, really. And here they are extremely practical, the courses. And basically, guys, for Lebanese founders, deep learning AI is the best single starting point because it is fast, free, and immediately applicable. All right. So you can go from I have never used an API to I built a prototype that calls an AI model in weeks, or even in one weekend, actually. Why weeks? You know? Uh, Also, we have Google AI Essentials, which is Google's free AI literacy courses, which can basically they are self-paced, they can help us. There are also many more like operator content. Is basically it's not a formal term that you will find in a textbook. It refers to content created by people who have actually built and scaled companies. So, as opposed to academics or journalists, it is the difference between reading a research paper, for example, and reading a memoir by someone who opened, let's say, a business and failed and at the end made it. So, it tells you what decisions actually felt like in the moment, what frameworks founders used, and how they made it. And this is a very, very important point because this is not something that that you can learn basically uh, at school or any other university, let's say. Also, there's responsible AI. What is responsible AI and why should the founder care? This is a very important point, guys, because if you're gonna build startups, you really need to abide by responsible AI. And these refer to the principles, processes, and practices that guide how AI systems are designed, deployed, and governed in ways that are fair, safe, and transparent and accountable. All right. So these are also very, very important. So do keep them in mind. Now, for the building. So let's say you want to go ahead and build your own tools. Also, feel free to take pictures. For the no-low codes, we have multiple tools. We have Zapier, Make, Retool, Bubble, VoiceFlow, etc. I'm gonna talk a bit about Zapier because they are all the same. But basically, Zapier is one of the most widely used automation platforms in the world. It has over 2 million businesses on it that are using it as of 2024. This number is massively more now. And the core concept is very simple. So you really just connect two apps with like something that we call as app, which is just a trigger in one app that automatically triggers an action in the other. So for example, when a new form submission arrives in Google Form, for example, it automatically adds a row to a Google Sheet, for example, and after that it sends a Slack message or a Teams message to your team. So this is also an action. So here, zero code required. We are just connecting the dots. We are building workflows and automation workflows. And one thing to mention is that Zapier, Make, and all of these apps, they connect over 6,000 apps together, including, let's say, Gmail, WhatsApp Business, Salesforce, OpenAI, Notion, and hundreds and thousands of others. So again, it's Zapier, guys, it's the most valuable tool as a prototype tool. It's a way to test whether a workflow automation actually saves time before you invest in building it properly. All right. So before you invest in building a custom AI document processor, you could use Zapier's to route an uploaded file and receive the answer and just put it on a Google Drive or something. So all in a few hours with zero code knowledge. All right. And also one thing to mention is that they have a free plan. So it handles basic automations. And the paid plan starts at around $20 a month, which is also nothing. So again, all of the other ones, they do the same. All of these, the no code ones. Also, there's also N8N that is worth mentioning. Now, for the model APIs, we spoke about them basically. It's just a way for us to access an AI model's capability over the internet. So you send it a request, it processes it using the AI model online, and it sends it back with a response to you. All right. So you do not need to download or run the model yourself. You just pay for what you use. This is basically the infrastructure that powers these AI. You can use OpenAI, Anthropic, Gemini, all of these, they offer the same offering. And also, we already mentioned actually an 8N, which is very well known, and this is what we call a workflow glue. And workflow glue, basically, guys, it describes the tool that connects your AI model to the rest of your product. So the data sources it reads from and the action it triggers and so on. So an AI model by itself, guys, just to give you context, just takes input and produces output, while the workflow glue is what turns that capability into, let's say, a product that reads from your CRM, sends an email, updates a record, and notifies a team member and basically automatically in the right sequence every time. And this is basically the power of using workflow glue like an A10. Now also the final one is for validating. So we have survey tools like Typeform, Google Forms, Tally. They all do the same thing. They can just be used for survey and form building platform to present questions, for example, one at a time or multiple questions and so on. And they help you to do interviews and early validations for you guys. All right. And Typeform here is the recommended one. Also, we have analytics tools like Mixpanel, Amplitude. Basically, Mixpanel, for example, it helps you track what users actually do in your products. So it is the gold standard for product analytics, especially in your stage where you're starting from nothing. It's very important to understand not just how many people visit your product, but what specific actions they take, in what order, and where do they drop off, what makes them leave, what makes them stay, etc. So unlike Google Analytics, which is primarily designed for website traffic, Mixpanel is built for in-product behavior tracking. And this is very, very important, guys. Okay? So again, for an AI product MVP, Mixpanel answers the questions that matter to most. Is the AI output actually being used, or are users ignoring it? Is my product being used as it should, etc. Okay. These do the same thing. The others, they do something. They do similar results. And for pilot tracking, it's very important that you do use, for example, Airtable for spreadsheet databases for pilot management, uh, just to have all sorts of data. Notion as well to keep track of everything is just for documentation, tracking, team alignment in one place. So it's a workspace tool that combines, again, all sorts of data for project management. It's very flexible and basically it helps in all of these stuff that you are building the startup with. All right. Um, yeah. So basically that's it, guys. These are the tools. Now I'm gonna leave it for any questions, and yeah, feel free to go ahead and ask away.
Thank you, Jean-Pierre. Thank you so much. Personally, I learned a lot. I didn't have much knowledge about this, but it's great. I like also like how you showed us actually real world, as we said, like a sector pain points and how it actually can be solved them. I hope our participants learned from this. Let's hear their questions. Any questions?
Amazing, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, guys,
Thank
if you have any further questions in the future, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. This is my email. This is my website. Just feel free to ask away. I'll be more than happy to support. Feel free to reach out there. Amazing,
thank
guys.
you.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining. I really hope you learned a lot from the session, and maybe you now have an idea that you'd like to apply or would like to implement, and you would like to like apply to our program with this one. I will be sending you a follow-up email, like with a link, also recording of the session if you'd like to visit it again sometime. Um, that's it for me. Thank you, Jean. Thank you, Jean-Pierre.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank, thank you so much.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Thank you.